proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. A major manhunt is underway in France after 2 prison guards were shot dead and 3 others left seriously injured during an ambush on a prison convoy. Vehicles were rammed at toll booths on a motorway at Anqueville in the northwest of the country. Images on social media showed at least 2 men in balaclavas carrying rifles near an SUV that was up in flames. The car appeared to have been rammed into the front of the prison van. Local media is naming the suspect as Mohamed Amra, who's 30 years old and reportedly has ties to powerful gangs in the city of Marseille. A new report says there's no widespread evidence a post-study visa for international students is being abused. The government's migration advisors say the visa attracted students to the UK and should remain, adding the graduate visa route is not undermining the integrity and quality of the higher education system. The committee's report says if it was scrapped, universities would lose income from international students' fees and have to cut courses. The government has said it's considering the findings and would respond in due course. It introduced tougher rules for international students this year, which it said aimed to help slash migration. The Prime Minister's calling on shoppers to back British produce as he hosts the second Farm to Fork summit at Downing Street. Labour says the Conservatives have driven farmers to breaking point and have pledged a new deal, they say will put money back into their pockets. But Rishi Sunak's told members of the food industries that Britain must reduce its reliance on fruit and vegetables from overseas. A Home Office minister says the Good Friday Agreement should not be read so creatively as to cover migration issues. It's after a judge at Belfast High Court ruled that parts of the government's Illegal Migration Act should not be applied in Northern Ireland. Responding to an urgent question from the DUP, Tom Pursglove said the government intends to appeal against the court's judgment and would not be deterred from its Rwanda plan. And the first official painted portrait of the King since his coronation has been unveiled at Buckingham Palace. The oil on canvas shows His Majesty in the uniform of the Welsh Guards, of which he was made regimental colonel in 1975. The portrait, by British artist Jonathan Yeo, was commissioned in 2020 to celebrate the then Prince of Wales's 50 years as a member of the Drapers' Company in 2022. In the new portrait, the King is depicted sword in hand with a butterfly landing on his shoulder. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's time for Headliners.
Thank you, Tatiana. Hello and welcome to Headliners, your run through the next day's news with 3 comedians. I'm Leo Carson. Tonight, I'm joined by Paul Cox, the People's Gammon, and Jonathan Cogan, the People's Fish Fingers. We don't know how we got that nickname. How are you both doing?
Yeah, doing really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good as well, thank you.
I've adopted this new voice.
Yeah, you've got a very husky, sexy voice.
Yeah, it's for the rashers. They like it. We're on late at night. I thought I'd talk to them like this from now on.
Yeah, something happened? Was there an accident? Or...
No, I stopped. I was on 60 a day.
And then you've stopped?
And just stopped it straight away.
And now you sound like a smoker.
Hamburgers, not cigarettes.
OK, well, let's have a look at Wednesday's front pages. The Daily Mail has sex education to be banned for under-9s and no more gender dogma. The Telegraph has Tories tell police, bring back stop and search. The Times leads with don't teach pupils about gender ID, schools told. The Guardian has US warns Georgia not to side with Russia against the West. I assume they mean the country Georgia, not the state in America. The iNews has new weight loss jab gold rush offers obesity hope to millions. And finally, the Metro has UK's record 3 million food parcels. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with Wednesday's Daily Mail, Paul.
Sex education to be banned for under 9s in blow to perverts, and no more gender dogma. The blow to perverts thing isn't in there.
Blow was the
Can I just say, anybody under a 9 shouldn't be having sex anyway. It's for good-looking people only. Get out. Get out of here.
Lovely work, Cokes. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan will unveil proposals tomorrow for a total ban on the subject until at least year 5. Year 5. Which, by the way, I think most of us got sex education about year 6 when we were kids. I don't know about Kogan because he's 12.
Right, the bus ride one.
Yeah. She's also set to rule out the gender identity. Gender identity is a contested subject that should not be taught in schools, which is really interesting because the Tories all of a sudden seem to be trying to Tory their way out of this mess.
Yeah.
And it feels, particularly with Gillian Keegan, she's like, right, I'm in this job now for like 5 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to Tory the living daylights out of this.
It really does feel like that across a lot of issues, that the Tories have had 14 years of being the Labour Party, quite a left-wing Labour Party at that, and then they've suddenly, in their final sprint to the finish line, they've decided to become Tories and leave a Tory country for Labour.
I think it's too little too late. It's like when your girlfriend dumps you, then you start doing the washing up for the first time in like 10 years. You're like, oh, I'm a good guy. But yeah, no, I think it's, I think they've had their moment in the sun, and now it's will break loose.
It's interesting. I mean, how long? Let's say it becomes policy, do Labour just chuck it all out? I mean, what would? Sorry, Leo, I know you've got to move on, but for me, it's really interesting because if this did come in, then what would be the reason for overruling it?
Well, exactly, and I think the fact that the Cass report has come out, that now it'll stay. So moving on, what's in the front cover of the Telegraph, Jonathan?
Front cover of the Telegraph, Tories tell police bring back stop and search. So this has obviously been a contentious issue. I think it was when Theresa May...
Oh, we need to...
Oh, go on.
Sorry, we need to go to Paul because your mic isn't working, apparently. Let's have a look.
Sabotage.
Let's have a look at the eye, Paul.
OK, well, I could have picked up that story if you like, but let's go with the eye for now. New weight loss jab, Gold Rush, offers obesity hope for millions. So apparently there are 322 anti-obesity drugs in development worldwide at the moment, and the new drugs in development include more convenient versions, including incumbent weight loss drugs that are already available, but they're going to be now in pill form, or actually be an injection of some kind. So, I mean...
I think the obese people would probably rather a pill, especially if it was a big pill painted like a cake.
Yeah, just a couple of slices of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because this is a good thing in terms of overcoming the obesity crisis, which is a huge drain on NHS resources. Yeah. But does it encourage you? Is it a bit like the morning after pill? I mean, do you just eat as much as you possibly can and then just give yourself an injection in the morning?
So you think it could be encouraging, do you agree with Paul that it could encourage just bad behaviour, and everybody's going to be just gorging on chicken wings?
But if you do that and then you can cancel it out, that's perfect. Isn't that the world we want to live in? Can I just say, my microphone has not been working, but this was the funniest I've ever been in the first section. You just have to imagine the brilliant things I said. Yeah.
Superb stuff.
Maybe we'll recreate them later on.
I believe you could reach those heady heights again, Jonathan.
Do you think so?
Yeah, and let's have a look at the Metro, Jonathan. What have they got?
Yeah, so this is a crazy story. This is proper, wild action news. Very tragic because a couple of people have died, but on the headline of the Metro is UK's record 3 million food parcels. But the story I believe we're going to cover is the prison van ambush horror on motorway. So this is a story that happened in France early today. I believe it was a convicted criminal high up in the drugs world was essentially busted out of a moving van when he was being transported, and 2 of his guards were killed by heavily armed men. And this is something out of a a crazy drug film. This is not something you see every day.
Well, we saw the footage in the news bulletin and it really was. It was like Grand Theft Auto come to life. I mean, they'd sort of rammed this police van that's transporting this man, Mohammed Amra. one of the new style of French people. And he's from a gang in Marseille. He's been convicted of burglary and also indicted on a kidnapping that led to somebody dying. But as you say, apparently he's linked to drugs, because burglary on its own, I can't imagine people...
They were very keen to get him out. I mean, he was on an 18-month sentence for burglary, so all the things that he's accused of and being in charge of, he hasn't, been convicted on those things. And 18 months, maybe 9 months to a year in prison. They were just it's an interesting story in the sense that they could have just let him sit there for that year. He could have probably run the gang from prison. So it'd be interesting to know why they wanted to get him out so quickly. Yeah. But it's tragic stuff. I must admit, I was saying this. There's always an element of this, because if you're watching a film, you're excited by the break. When it happens in real life, if someone is able to break out of prison, it's quite something. Obviously, it's very tragic. And there's, one of the guys...
Two deaths.
Yeah, and one of the guys that died, his other half was 5 months pregnant as well. So I don't want to take anything away from that at all.
Well, yeah, and we've seen, previously there's the glamorisation of, the Brinks-Mac, the great train robbery, and that led to, I don't think the person died, but they were certainly severely injured for the rest of their life, basically disabled for the rest of their life, I believe.
Yeah, it's tragic stuff.
At GB, we believe the only acceptable crime is white-collar crime. That's what we believe.
Yeah.
So no violence, no
fraud,
guns,
mainly.
Fraud, yes,
Absolutely.
if we can.
That's what we stand for. Anyway, let's, now that your mic's working, let's have a look at the Telegraph, Jonathan.
Oh, we're going back to the Telegraph. Absolutely. So the headline here is Tories tell police, bring back, stop and search. So as I was saying before, maybe falling on deaf ears or deaf mics, the police have been advised to bring back this policy, which was criticised, especially 10 years ago. There was a big campaign against it. I think it was when Theresa May was... what was she doing? She was homesick back then. And essentially, this is a policy where police will stop and search young men. And the problem is with it, or the alleged problem with it, it was mostly affecting groups from sort of African and Caribbean descent, young men. And basically, it got called racist because they were being profiled. But at the same time, could you argue that if this is, knife crime, which this was aiming to stop, affects those young men from those groups most, they're getting killed, it's a terrible thing. Does it not make sense to try and prevent that in some kind of way, or is this just profiling? I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I worked as a criminal intelligence analyst, and we were taught, I don't know if this has changed, it probably has with all the DEI focus, we were taught that if, there's an overrepresentation of perpetrators in a certain group, you're actually doing a disservice to that demographic group by ignoring it or sweeping it under the carpet or pretending it doesn't happen. And we've seen that, how the grooming gangs issues been allowed to fester instead of being dealt with, and the problem got worse than if it had been dealt with.
And they've made discrimination a dirty word, and it's not really. I guess, of course, it is when it comes to discriminating someone on the basis of the colour of their skin. But when you're discriminating people on whether they're innocent or guilty, you have to chuck everybody into the mix. So the whole point of policing is to be discriminatory. And
we've seen soaring knife crime. We've seen some very high-profile events in London over the last few years, with machete fights, in the streets of London. Some of it almost looks like medieval jousting.
Well, guy with the chair, fighting over a fair maiden.
Like he's going to fight a lion.
That's true.
There must be some white skin examples, but I can't think of any right now. But when you think of the grooming gangs, for instance, now that they were positively discriminated against, and that police were unable to manage that situation for fear of being racist. Now, I would much rather the police were occasionally called racist.
Yeah, and of course the authorities were discriminating against the girls as well because they were working class.
Yes. So so what? Discriminate. But, if it saves lives, it catches criminals.
But at the same time, as a youngish rebel, I wouldn't want the police to overreach and stop people unnecessarily just because they can.
So in North London, as a white guy driving around in your BMW, you're going to be fine, mate. Don't you worry about it.
Actually, my girlfriend drives our BMW. I'm not allowed to.
That's it. One day you'll learn how to parallel park. Anyway, that's the front pages dealt with. Coming up, we've got good news for Rishi, Europe copying our Rwanda plan, and Hamas coming to a council estate near you. See you in a couple of minutes.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love, you're going to take your medicine, it's going to be good for you, you may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported, and not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Leo Carson, my panel, Paul Cox and Jonathan Cogan. There they are, sitting there, all resplendent with their mics working. Kicking off this section with the Times, and apparently Rishi might meet his migration pledge. Has he pledged to leave the country after losing the election?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Rishi Sunak has a fighting chance of meeting migration pledge, says Watchdog. This is Brian Bell, who is the chairman of the Migration Advisory Committee, otherwise known as MAC, said the government ban on foreign students bringing family members with them to the UK was producing a much bigger fall than government expected. It could help reduce overall net migration to 200,000, maybe even down to 150,000, which is really interesting because back in June last year, we reported on the fact that there was a net migration of 672,000. Yeah. Huge story, huge number. But what's interesting is the difference between 672,000 and the possible 150, 200,000 is about 500,000 people. So this story suggests that students are bringing families to the tune of about 500,000 people every year net.
They've got some big families.
They have, and I guess, look, it's some unexpected good news for Rishi Sunak. Yeah. By hook or by crook, he may see that number come down. It's also good for the country in many ways because irrespective of where, I've said this 1,000 times, particularly on here, irrespective of where they're coming from and who they are, colour of skin, culture, religion, all that sort of things, if there's too many people here, our system fails. Yeah. And, it's only it's the most vulnerable that become impacted by that. And we see that all across society.
Yeah. And, I mean, Jonathan, this has been reported in The Guardian very differently. They reported that there's no evidence at all.
Their article was
students
basically
are coming here and bringing families and stuff, which I don't know is a complete nonsense. It's like everything in The Guardian. Like I used the student visa scheme to go to Canada for a year. It's everybody, not everybody,
last year, yeah.
People like me.
Well, I mean, any loophole that can be exploited will eventually get exploited. But this really does seem to be very high in the the number of people who've come over through these student visas and then started working. Yeah, I mean, the way this article is phrased, especially the headline, it's that Rishi Sunak has a fighting chance. I've noticed every headline about Rishi is kind of posing him this underdog that's ready to kind of like strike back because they know it's over.
Because Brits love an underdog.
They do.
Maybe not this one. I mean, he's a billionaire underdog. It's slightly different. But, I mean, do you think we should maybe replace all our clunky, exploitable, gameable visa and migration systems with visa auctions? Because these would be amazing. Then somebody wants to come here, they have to bid in an auction to get the visa.
Wow.
So the state gets money that we can then, put into our services. And it also ensures that you get the people who... a better class.
It might discriminate against, but...
What if you have like a genius doctor from like Mumbai who wants to come over, but he doesn't have the money, or she?
Why doesn't he? If he's such a good doctor, why doesn't he have money?
Does this system exist? Is this?
And he's like,
have you invented this system?
No. This is. I mean, I don't think so.
I've never heard of what
visa auctions.
Yeah, so basically a visa goes to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
I.e. drug cartels.
We might.
You're saying
probably just some due diligence on money laundering and stuff like that. But yeah, essentially, I mean, what's the point? The drug dealers come here anyway. We might as well charge them for it anyway. Moving on, we've got the Mail now, and things aren't going too well for Britain when our Prime Minister gives us World War II style advice in case we run out of food. Jonathan.
Yeah, he now goes by Rishi the Riveter. We can do it. So Rishi Sunak urges Brits. Is that a good impression? I don't know.
No.
Sound like Moss from the IT crowd.
Still funny.
I've never heard Rishi Sunak talk.
A lot of people haven't.
No, just find politics dull. So Rishi Sunak urges Brits to grow more apples and pears. This sounds very wholesome.
Sounds
but
like a Cockney thing.
It does, yeah.
Like
grow some more stairs.
So there's another way of
allotment between floors.
Another way of saying manning up, isn't it?
Grow an apple and pear. Anyway, so Rishi has warned that over-reliance on food imports could undermine the country's security. So he warns that, a new food security index has found that the UK is too reliant on foreign imports, particularly in the case of fruit and vegetables, and only 55% of vegetables and 70% of fruit bought in this country is grown here. Well, I think a big part of that is because all the delicious fruit needs sun, and we don't really... If you want to eat a banana, if you want to eat a delicious, go-go berry or whatever it's called, you can't...
Banana plantations of Dundee.
Yeah. What do we grow here? Strawberries?
Turnips? Yeah. Anybody want a nice slice of turnip?
Well, I think the reason why this has become such an issue is because after the Russia-Ukraine war, we've sort of seen that a lot of our food supplies can be put in jeopardy. So we just need to grow our own turnips.
Yeah, and particularly if we're going to continue with high levels of migration, it's going to become more of an issue, the fact that we can't grow enough food here to sustain us.
Unless they bring fruit.
And you need food very regularly. You need it like several times a day.
This is all about food sovereignty, and it's kind of the UK versus Team World, as Lewis would put it in many ways. And in order for a supply chain like that to work, it relies on the world getting on.
Yeah.
Everyone who's like this one world government business, like Klaus Schwab and all those other evil dictators, it's all very well for them to say, if you're very wealthy and you sit at the top of the pyramid, things look easy when you look down, but they're not. And we don't get on with Russia.
Yeah.
And they can stop the supply chain. What is remarkable is the supply chain of people, migrants, seems to carry on regardless. So if we fill their pockets full of bananas and peaches, then we might have overcome the issue.
I like your term food sovereignty,
Yeah, I coined it the other night. Even Nick Dixon, right, and he's never said anything nice to anyone.
Like the term?
He said that was a good comment.
I'm gonna claim food sovereignty when my girlfriend wants some of my chips. No, absolutely not.
Moving on, we've got the Express now, and will Labour bring lots of Palestinian terrorists to the UK and give them council houses? Well, they've already trialled it in London, giving a council house to Hamas chief, Paul.
Yes, and he needed it as well, Leo, come on. Lee Anderson claims Labour plans Homes for Hamas scheme. So this is responding to a social media post from Labour MP Sam Tarries, who called for family visa schemes to bring Palestinian refugees to safety in the UK via safe and legal route. Now, safe and legal route is such a buzzword, particularly for the left of politics. Yeah. They love it, don't they? Yummy, yummy, safe and legal route. Now, we know it's very difficult to produce a safe and legal route anywhere in the world.
And it's not so much the route, it's the fact that, some of these people exploiting this system, this safe and legal route, are going to be Hamas terrorists, and they're going to be coming to the UK. And, as much as I want to help everybody around the world and give everybody a cuddle and, give everybody all my tax money, also don't at all. And if we bring... I mean, look what happened to Lebanon. Lebanon was a majority Christian country. It took in lots of Palestinian refugees, descended into internecine warfare, and now it's an absolute basket case. Look at Jordan. Took in lots of Palestinian refugees.
But Jordan and Egypt aren't taking any more, are they?
No, this was a while ago.
But nowadays.
And they had their own military and, caused all sorts of problems for Jordan. So now, the Middle Eastern countries are like, no way. But for some reason, left-wing people in this country are like, oh, yes, please, that looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's a matter of culture as well. So you rely on... Immigration needs integration.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have some of the same issues as you do with immigration in that sense, but I do have huge issues when it comes to integration. And there are other places in the world. So, for instance, when you look at the Ukraine-Russian war, Ukrainians that are coming here have a cultural baseline aligned with Europe, aligned with the way we are here in Great Britain. And the Palestinians would be much culturally more at home in Northern Africa or the Middle East somewhere. And people like Egypt, as you were saying, and other countries, Qatar, for instance, they're not opening their arms. Yeah. So we are as well. And it's always bleeding heart liberals on the left who say, come, come, come. But it doesn't solve any problems.
Yeah, and Israel needs workers. It's issued lots of visas to Indian workers to come and work in Israel. I think if it was safe to bring tens of thousands of Palestinians into the UK, it would also be safe to bring them into Israel, and they're clearly not doing
Just to play devil's advocate, homes under the Hamas, is that a Channel 4 show?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I'm surprised they didn't go with that instead of homes for Hamas.
Yeah,
that's why he's a politician, not a comedian.
Homes under the Hamas is...
We've got the Sun now, and we've been told that the Rwanda scheme is cruel, illegal and unworkable. Well, now the rest of Europe wants to copy it, Jonathan.
Yes, indeed. Just remind me, what story are we on?
So this is number 8.
8, perfect, I knew that. The headline is, Boost for Rishi as 19 EU countries demand the right to introduce Rwanda-style migration schemes. So a drive by European Union countries to replicate a Rwanda-style immigration scheme has sparked delight in Downing Street. So the heads of 19 member states have demanded Brussels bosses look at offshore processing to help them stem the flow of illegal arrivals. And Sunak spokesman said, vindication for the flagship Rwanda plan. He says, I suspect we'll continue to see some of them follow our lead. Then he did a big smug smile, apparently. So it does seem like other countries are kind of... following Britain's lead in this.
Yeah.
It's not so much about deportation, but it's more about the actual processing to be done abroad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this scheme obviously has had its many critics, but it does seem to be a deterrent at the moment, as we've seen with a kind of flock of migrants going over to Ireland, fearing deportation now. Yeah,
and a similar scheme worked very well in Australia, although I suppose they've got different... It's kind of harder to sail to Australia.
Yeah, surrounded by massive sharks.
Are you talking about when we sent all the criminals over or not?
No,
no,
I genuinely...
I thought that's what
I was
you meant.
being serious.
I was like, great joke. Well, that's my joke. That's what you meant.
And yeah, this is interesting because all the people who hate Rwanda also, I bet they have European flags in their Twitter bios. They'll be on Blue Sky.
It creates a huge paradoxical issue for these people because they've got to say everywhere in the world's wonderful, particularly Africa.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they've also got to say, you can't send them to Africa, it's terrible.
And they've also got to say Britain's incredibly racist and has a horrible right-wing government, and Europe is this paragon of virtue. And now Europe wants to be like us.
They caught the racism.
It's only a massive issue for those who are divisive about their politics. If you take the issue and remove right and left from it, it is an issue that exists, irrespective of which way you vote. This is a problem all across Europe. And the third country, the third party idea is probably the best thing that's ever been tabled. Because I'll tell you for why, this safe route, no one has ever been able to explain how that would work.
Yeah.
We know how Rwanda would work. You get a plane, you stick them on it, you fly them there and they don't come back. Now, you might think that's cruel, but it works.
Yeah.
It solves the problem.
Yeah.
Safe and legal routes is just like a water slide straight into the country.
Yeah.
Come on in. Well, jobs are good. And
we're creating an incentive when, really we need to be, stopping people gaming the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, that's it for this part, but we're hosting a night with the headliners live, and you can join us for an evening of comedy with Andrew Doyle, Simon Evans, Josh Howie and me. For more information, scan the QR code on your screen right now or visit gbnews.com and you'll find more about it. Anyway, we've made it halfway. Join us in a moment for Welsh farmers beating bureaucrats, electric pulse weapons on the streets of London, and Harry and Meghan deny that they're in trouble. See you in a couple of minutes.
Hi there, welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Low pressure remains close to the UK for the next 24 hours and beyond. That means further showers at times, but it's not going to be a complete washout. There will be some drier and sunnier interludes. Some places will avoid the showers for long periods of time. That low pressure is sitting to the southwest. That's where we'll continue to see showers feeding into Cornwall and Devon overnight, but otherwise drying up nicely across Northern Ireland, Wales, into the Midlands, southern England, staying largely dry in the far northeast of Scotland. In between, areas of cloud, some outbreaks of rain, but some drier interludes as well. Many places under the cloud, staying at 12 to 13 Celsius, but cooler there as we begin the day for Northern Ireland, for southwest and west Scotland. Some decent sunny spells first thing. And actually, for many places, it's a bright day, but there will be this zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain from East Anglia into the East Midlands, Northern England, the far south of Scotland, keeping temperatures suppressed, and some low cloud hugging the North Sea coast of Scotland and Northern England. Elsewhere, sunny spells and a few showers, and it's a similar theme as we begin Thursday. This zone of cloud edges north into parts of northern England, southern Scotland, and then eventually Northern Ireland. Either side of that, showers will develop, but the far north of Scotland, the far south of England, stays dry and sunny on Thursday. Friday, further sunny spells and showers, highs of 21 or 22.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Daily Mail now with ructions in the Tory party over rainbow lanyards. Grant Shapps has come out to support them. Jonathan.
Well, Grant Shapps famously trained at Lecoq Clown School, so he wanted something to go with his suspenders. That's what I heard.
Did he?
Yeah. With
the Googly whatever it's called.
Look, we'll let Ofcom decide. So, Cabinet ties itself in knots over ban on rainbow lanyards. So, a Cabinet split has opened up on civil service rainbow lanyards as it emerges that guidance across government will not actually ban officials from wearing them. So Esther McVey, who was appointed to Rishi Sunak's cabinet as a minister without portfolio, said recently that staff would be disciplined for having any messaging on their lanyards because you're meant to be impartial. And, that's a form of political activism in a visible way. But Grant Shapps recently, because the actual guidance says there's no mention of the lanyards, Grant Shapps has essentially said, I don't care what people, express on their lanyards. He just cares that they're doing the jobs that they're meant to do, which is kind of my view, I think.
But I mean, the rainbow, the pride flag is a political symbol. If people were walking around and some people are very offended by it, particularly a lot of gay people who feel that the rainbow movement has been co-opted by the TQ+ part of the alphabet. And you know, if people were walking around the hospital with a Nazi flag or Nazi lanyard, people would be upset. Although, of course, I'm not suggesting for a moment that Nazis are as bad as gender ideologists.
No, they're not, and I think that was a good clarification for Ofcom there, Leo. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because we seem to have forgotten, irrespective of all this niff-naff and trivia, we've forgotten that civil servants are supposed to remain neutral, visibly neutral, the whole time. Now, when they're wandering around the corridors of these dark and dusty places, you could argue that a lanyard isn't going to affect anyone. However, in this kind of bubble we now exist within, and there's this political division everywhere, and civil servants seem to be at the epicentre of changing policy that they don't like.
The blob? Is that them?
The blob, exactly, the blob. And it has to be fairly senior civil servants because, you know, I was a lowly civil servant once and I didn't change anything, trust me. Barely had a lanyard.
Never mind, get to choose what's on it.
Exactly. So I think it's, you know what, ostensibly, I don't think anyone really cares what they wear on the lanyard. However, that we need to bring it back to civil servants are kind of seen but not heard.
Yeah.
And it will do them good.
Yeah.
It will do them good. The same in the way, you know, police dancing at Pride.
Yeah.
It will just do them good not to do it. Now, you know, do what you like on a Saturday. Yeah. But during the week, 9 to 5, just...
So it's more of an optics thing, or you think that...
It's an optics thing for me. I just think it'll help them. Who cares what they believe in?
Yeah.
During their job, they're being paid to be civil servants.
That's fair.
And they're supposed to serve everybody without fear or favour. Everybody's equal. So why would you wear a political symbol, such as the pride flag, that, you know, favours certain groups and also, you know, pushes an ideology that's harmful to certain groups, and is also seen as very offensive to certain groups?
Or we go the other way, and you have everything you believe on your lanyard, and you can have like you have your kinks and stuff.
Or you have everything. I think what the NHS is currently trying to do is making everything out of pride flags, so you won't even notice the lanyards.
What, the scrubs?
Because everything's a kaleidoscope of trans flags.
It's like Burning Man.
We've got The Independent now, and dating app Bumble made a little joke about celibacy. I assume everyone took it in good humour, Paul.
No. Bumble apologises for celibacy ads. We made a mistake, they say. So it said, you know full well a vow of celibacy is not the answer. It said this on one of its billboards. Now, although the marketing team had been aiming for it to be sort of a tongue-in-cheek provocation, it ultimately didn't land how they wanted. Now, that's really important because the vast majority of Bumble users are seeking sort of non-celibacy related shenanigans.
Yeah, they are sick.
As soon as possible, very quickly. Length has got nothing to do with it. So I'd imagine that...
Why did they cut to me for that?
They just had to, mate. I imagine that it was quite a small minority that made the complaint. Who's really getting upset about this? It was quite obviously tongue-in-cheek from a dating site. You know, I don't know much about these things, but I'm assuming that it's all about hookup culture. And, you know, so what? You're not going to be celibate if you're a part of the hookup culture.
Exactly, yeah. This is, I mean, I don't think it's just for hooking up. It's also, I met my wife.
Oh, right,
and,
okay.
That's quite a long hookup. But yeah, people seem to be stretching to get offended by this. So they've heard from apparently the asexual community is offended by it because celibacy is a serious part of their identity. People whose reproductive rights are continuously restricted are upset about it because celibacy isn't a choice, or celibacy is a choice for them. And for other people, they just want to be celibate and they don't want it to be the butt of a joke. And it's like, oh my God. Like,
lighten up.
You're just not getting any.
Well, what Bumble said was, a spokesperson for Bumble said, instead of bringing joy and humour, we intentionally did the opposite, which is actually what happened to me during my Grant Shapps joke in the previous segment. Hey, when I wrote it, I was like, this is gold. He went to clown school.
I literally took it, literally.
Yeah.
But,
Grant Shapps' history, he had weird websites selling
really?
sort of weird
weapons.
But it's been described as pyramid-esque, although I understand, we've got to be careful
okay.
about people. But yeah, if you look at the websites, I did a video about it on my YouTube channel, and very, very amusing. It had an alter ego. It was all very funny. I can't remember what he was selling, or if he was selling like some sort of business courses. But I would fully believe that he went to clown school and then
I do as well. Absolutely,
Cambridge.
I do wish that people wouldn't make perhaps their skin colour or their sexuality the main centre of their identity.
I'll stop
it's been encouraged now. There are, people my daughter's age, 14, 15, their whole life they've been told that these things are the most important things about you.
Yeah.
They're not. You can go about your sexual life without telling everybody.
Which people used to do, and it was fantastic. And also, people used to be judging their character and their personality rather than what they identified as. It's ridiculous. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now with a victory for Welsh farmers over Kafkaesque metropolitan bureaucrats, Jonathan.
Well, thank you for assuming that you think I know who Kafka is. So, yeah, brilliant, thank you. So, the Welsh Government forced to postpone Eco Scheme after farmers' protest. So, a scheme that would force farmers to dedicate 20% of their land to eco measures has been postponed by the Welsh Government after significant backlash. So, there was basically this new policy that was being proposed, and the Welsh farmers did a big old protest against it, and now I think they've put it back until 2026. So, I think they bought themselves some time. But yeah, they were expected to give a fifth of their land to, I think it's rewilding and other eco things. But I've watched a couple of episodes of Clarkson's Farm, and from those I've seen, there's very slim margins in farming, right? I don't think you can just give away 20% of your land that easily and not have it affect the bottom line and stuff. And it's nice to, get the bugs back and stuff. But, yeah.
And also, these rules that are decided around net zero or whatever it is around farming are made up by faceless bureaucrat automatons sitting at desks. These civil servants.
Whichever way you look at this, it's difficult to deny that. And most green policies, unfortunately for green people who create policies, are nice to haves.
Yeah.
And because they are just nice to haves, you have to create fear. Otherwise they just stay nice to haves. And by fear, I mean you have to tell people that the world is burning to death and it's all going to happen next week. And you've got, Greta Thumbnail coming out and talking about all sorts of different trivia because she's been told, she's been feared into that, and now it's her career. She's got no choice.
Yeah.
I don't know what she could become now. She could probably become an open mic comedian. She looks like most of them.
Yeah,
but
about as funny as most of them.
Well, exactly. So they often put the cart before the horse, and that's exactly what's happening farming here. Now, this story does...
And, of course, that's terrible. If you try and plough a field with the cart before the horse...
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Anywhere.
And now they've got tractors, mate. But it doesn't... I don't know what it's like in Scotland, so to be fair to you, culturally, I don't know what your references are. But... Take it that, to be fair, there is balance within this story. Because they're saying, look, we didn't think that we'd employ this policy right now. I think they kind of would like to have done, but they're saying, no, we need to they've got an opportunity and that they need to do it at the right time. But of course, it's never going to be a right time. If you say to a farmer, you've got 100 acres and we want to give 20 of those acres just to wild woodland and you can't do anything with it.
Just based on a mad net zero whim that we've got this week.
The arrogance to know what's better than the actual farmers for their farms.
The custodians of the land themselves is ridiculous. Well, hopefully now that the Green Party's got a narrow focus on supporting Hamas, it's going to get better. Anyway, we've got the Independent now, and Harry and Meghan's charity is in trouble, but they say the cheque is in the post. As a comedian, I've heard that one before, Paul.
Harry and Meghan's Archwell charity delinquency row becomes blame game as Sussex sources hit back. So you don't know what I'm talking about. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, you probably heard of them. Archwell Foundation was found to be delinquent, which is a word that I don't normally use in this context.
That's my Year 8 school report.
Exactly, yeah. Because state officials failed to process a cheque that was sent on time. Sources close to the couple have fired back. Now, because the foundation have made this minor error, and it feels like a minor error to me.
They say I reckon they didn't have the money. Who uses cheques? When was the last time?
Well, this is a great point.
That one weird gig above a pub in London. Who still uses cheques?
Yeah, mine, Besserman.
That's what my word meant.
But the foundations, because they've stopped. They've told them they can't spend any more money. So of course, accusations are flying around, and it's difficult to navigate yourself through what is anti-Harry and Meghan, and there's plenty of reasons to be anti-Harry and Meghan. We've espoused lots of them here before, and what is just an opportunity to have a dig. But it does seem very remiss to get caught on this very basic thing. It would suggest that they didn't have the funds available. I can't
$200, right?
I can't imagine the Archwell Fund is absolutely flush.
Yeah, who's donating? Who's donating to these former royals?
I mean, it has gone down quite a lot. But there's only $200 they needed, right?
Okay, we could have bunged him that.
Yeah, you know, after...
You think it's part of a fundraising drive?
I think
Just put a PayPal in
I reckon you get more
story.
press by going delinquent, and then, yeah, that's
it's very sad. I find it very sad because they're cosplaying their life, aren't they? They're cosplaying to be royals when they don't want to be royals.
Yeah.
They're cosplaying to be charitable when really they don't want to be charitable. They just want to be in wherever they are, you know, and they're not quite. It hasn't quite worked out for them.
Yeah.
They're never gaining credibility, and without that credibility, they are sunk.
OK, well, we've just got the final section to go. We've got hilarious footage of the Dublin-New York portal and what to wear on holiday to avoid getting arrested. See you in a couple of minutes.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The King was out and about yesterday and he said he's feeling much better as he returned to public duties for the first time since he himself was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, he went on a visit with his wife, the Queen, to a Macmillan Cancer Centre in London, and he held hands with cancer patients whilst he was there.
So let's speak to royal commentator Jenny Bond with her thoughts on all of this. I thought he looked quite strong, all things considered, Jenny.
I thought so too. A little paler, perhaps, than usual, because he has quite a ruddy complexion. But all in all, looking very well. And I think Isabel is right to point out the hand. It wasn't just a handshake; it was a hand clasp. It was real, genuine, holding people's hands, empathising with them. You could see that in all his body language and his face. And I think this was probably, I think it was probably quite cathartic for him. And obviously for the patients he met there, but to meet people who are going through this trauma, this mental trauma as well as physical trauma, and truly empathise with them, I think must have been uplifting all round.
We saw the footage of him with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak soon after we all learnt of his diagnosis, when he said that he was overcome with emotion reading the letters that he'd been receiving from members of the public. And you got that sense yesterday, didn't you, that he really feels this deeply, not only because of his own diagnosis, but of course, as we know, because of his daughter-in-law's as well.
Yeah. And I think he was incredibly keen to thank people as personally as he could. He lingered on the steps as they went in longer than usual, and there was a much bigger press party than normally would be at an occasion like that. He knew this was a significant, important occasion. And I think that getting back to work is the best thing he can do.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Mirror now with some drunk people trying to see the Northern Lights, Paul.
Yeah, pals fooled after following Northern Lights, in inverted commas, only to discover the glow was a Premier Inn sign. What a couple of plonkers. Two pals were left in stitches after capturing what they thought was the colourful Northern Lights display in Norwich, only to learn that it was a purple signage from nearby Premier Inn. This is one of the most Norfolk things I've read in a while. I mean, it is good to hear that electricity has made its way to Norwich now, but at the same time, this is ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, completely. I almost can't believe it's true, and I hope it's not. It was on TikTok. I hope that they host it, because if this is real, and I've not seen the footage, I tried to find the footage, but I haven't seen it. If this is real, this is not good.
I saw photos and it looked real, because the light coming from this sign was really purple. It looked like the photos of the Northern Lights.
Well, these guys were coming back from their pharmacology ball, so I think they were probably, you know. They were pharmacist up, I imagine.
They'd smoked some Northern Lights.
Maybe. I mean, I'm a massive fan of the Premier Inn. I stay in them all the time. I like the Premier Inn. Premier Inn, I like you.
OK.
You normally stay for just 3 hours at a time there?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's all I need, mate.
I'm more of a Division 1 hotel. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now, and Peru has classified trans people as mentally ill. What nonsense! I'm a trans woman, and I'm absolutely fine, Paul.
Yeah, you're absolutely not, Leo. Peru officially classifies trans people as mentally ill. The Health Ministry said the decree was the only way Peru's public health services could guarantee full coverage of medical attention for mental health. Now,
are they sort of spinning this as, oh, this is a positive thing, we're making sure that trans people can get help?
So look, if we take it on face value, we've discussed trans ideology till literally the trans cows come home on a regular basis. Now, there are a lot of mental health issues surrounding this particular subject. So it might be a very good way of making sure that the right services are getting to these people. However, Peru seems to have a bit of a sort of homophobic, transphobic culture. And
very conservative, yeah.
It's very, very conservative. So it's kind of incendiary, isn't it? You know, for all the views we have about some of the ideology, none of us have an actual issue with trans people.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't call them mentally ill. Yeah. But who we would call mentally ill quite often are the activists that want to remove the genitals from young children.
And it did. I mean, it used to be classified as a mental illness in the, I can't remember what that Bible of psychological terms is. But I mean, I guess it's about the approach that has the best outcome for the most people. So, you know, if you treat it as a mental illness, is it going to result in a better outcome for people who identify as trans than, you know, treating them as if they are
right.
trans?
Well, I mean, I guess you have to take every case on its own merit, you know, base everyone as an individual and kind of decide for them. When they say mentally ill, are they essentially saying have gender dysphoria, or are they literally just feeling like, oh no, they're like in a kind of dismissive sense? Because I guess that'd be a difference. I mean,
yeah.
It's not clear. And I don't know if something's lost in translation, but they essentially have just classified all trans people as mentally ill.
OK, well...
Do better, Peru.
We've got the Metro now with a guide to workplace phrases, Jonathan.
Yep, the headline is, want to make passive-aggressive phrases more work-appropriate? HR expert reveals how. I already hate this person. OK, so apparently passive aggression isn't the best way to deal with disagreements. Coming across as having with a bad attitude can stall your career development, unless you work here, in which case you get your own show, which is fantastic. So yeah, basically telling you not to be sarky. That's what we do here. We just
that's the British way.
Yeah. But we don't have HR here.
Also,
we do.
Yeah,
we do. We have an HR department.
There's no HR, GB.
It doesn't really work, does it?
Yeah, it does. We've got a fantastic HR department.
This is a Metro.
I think I've got a few problems I need to write to them about.
Yeah. Have you been keeping a list?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to love it.
I didn't know that was your leg.
All those people are going to jail, Paul.
Yeah. But the thing is, Metro have told us not to be passive-aggressive. Yeah, they got called out on Twitter, then they just deleted their Twitter account recently. So they are the kings of being...
they are the most passive-aggressive newspaper. Well, let's squeeze this in the final minute. We've got the Independent, and a portal linking Dublin to New York has had to be turned off after people behaved in completely predictable ways, Paul.
Of course they did. All the mischief that's led to the New York to Dublin portal being switched off. Now, we've covered this a couple of times, so hopefully most of you are aware of what we're talking about, but there have been twin sculptures fitted with cameras and large screens fitted in each of the two cities, New York and Dublin, last week, in the wholesome aim of building a bridge for a united planet. But instead, on one case, one Dubliner held up a photograph of September 11th, 2001 terror attack. I think it was Dublin to America, where a rather young lady with buxom breasts. I don't know how you describe them otherwise for this time of day, but she was jiggling them about and...
Paul, in that voice, in that husky voice.
We're going to have to... What a time to leave the show. But the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with sex education to be banned for under-9s and no more gender dogma. But who's going to convince the children to be genderqueer communists? The Telegraph has Tories tell police bring back stop and search. The Times has, don't teach pupils about gender ID, schools told. The Guardian leads with, US warns Georgia not to side with Russia against the West. And we did check, they do mean the country, Georgia, not the state in America. The iNews has, new weight loss jab gold rush offers obesity hope for millions. You can be fat too. And finally, the Metro has UK's record 3 million food parcels, and those were your front pages. And that's all we have time for. Thank you, and good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Low pressure remains close to the UK for the next 24 hours and beyond. That means further showers at times, but it's not going to be a complete washout. There will be some drier and sunnier interludes. Some places will avoid the showers for long periods of time. That low pressure is sitting to the southwest. That's where we'll continue to see showers feeding into Cornwall and Devon overnight, but otherwise drying up nicely across Northern Ireland, Wales, into the Midlands, southern England, staying largely dry in the far northeast of Scotland. In between, areas of cloud, some outbreaks of rain, but some drier interludes as well. Many places under the cloud, staying at 12 to 13 Celsius, but cooler there as we begin the day for Northern Ireland, for southwest and west Scotland. Some decent sunny spells first thing. And actually, for many places, it's a bright day, but there will be this zone of cloud and outbreaks of rain from East Anglia into the East Midlands, Northern England, the far south of Scotland, keeping temperatures suppressed, and some low cloud hugging the North Sea coast of Scotland and Northern England. Elsewhere, sunny spells and a few showers, and it's a similar theme as we begin Thursday. This zone of cloud edges north into parts of northern England, southern Scotland, and then eventually Northern Ireland. Either side of that, showers will develop, but the far north of Scotland, the far south of England, stays dry and sunny on Thursday. Friday, further sunny spells and showers, highs of 21 or 22.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time.